In today's session, we will look at the book of 1 Corinthians chapter 15. In this section, Paul is referring to the resurrections. In verse 23 he writes, "But each person in his own arrangement. The firstfruits offering is Christ, next the people of Christ in his presence, then the completion, whenever he may give over the kingdom to the God and Father, whenever he, the Lord Jesus Christ, may render ineffective all rulership and all authority and ability. For it is necessary for him to reign as king continuously until where he, God, may put all the enemies under his, the Lord Jesus Christ's, feet. Death is the last enemy rendered ineffective. For he, God, subjected all things under his feet." Let's continue in the next page. "But whenever he, the Lord Jesus Christ, may say, all things have been subjected, it is clear that it is outside of the one, God, having subjected all things to him. But whenever all things may be subjected to him, then also the Son himself, the Lord Jesus Christ, will be subjected to the one having subjected all things to him, in order that God may be all things in all people and things." So let's read the explanation in True Bible Study, 1 Corinthians. Paul now explains regarding the order or progression of the resurrections and what happens afterwards. Each person who dies will be made alive within the arrangement, or that which is arranged in ordered sequence, the rank as in the military sense, the class or group that he or she belongs to. Christ is the offering of firstfruits, and you can read more about that in verse 20 of chapter 15 of 1 Corinthians. He, Christ, has already been raised up from among the rest of the dead people. He is now alive, and he will never die again. After that, secondly or next sequentially, the arrangement of dead people who belong to Christ in his presence. Christ's people. These are the holy people, or true Christians, those who have died between the day of Pentecost recorded in Acts chapter 2 and the moment of his coming, and then being present at his arrival to gather all holy people together with him in the air. Then afterwards, in sequence, the arrangement of the completion, the complete thing, or the ending issue, the fulfillment of what Christ will do, bringing everything to its complete, perfect state, which will come to pass at whatever time that Christ would give over the kingdom to God, who is his Father. Christ will hand over all that is contained within his sovereignty, his kingly or royal dominion and government, rule, authority, territory, and power, to the only true God, who is his Father. Christ will deliver it alongside or beside God, which will come to pass at whatever time that Christ would render ineffective, cause to be inactive, inoperative, and useless, all or every rulership, every first place, chief, or dignified hierarchical position which some spirits and people have been given or have taken for themselves, and all or every authority, authoritative power, or permitted right, which some people and spirits have been given or some have taken for themselves. An ability, able power, or capability, again, which some spirits and people have been given or have taken for themselves. The arrangement of the completion includes the resurrections of the rest of the dead people, both just and unjust, from among the children of Israel, and the Gentiles who lived before the day of Pentecost, those who live today but who refuse to believe the good message regarding the Lord Jesus Christ, and those who will have died between Christ's presence to gather the church together with him in the air and the time of the completion. The resurrection of those who will be beheaded during the wrath period of time will take place first, recorded in Revelation chapter 20, verses 4 and 5, before the resurrection of the rest of the people, both just and unjust, who will at that time be dead, recorded in Revelation chapter 20, verses 12 and 13. Paul continues to teach and explain. He says, in truth, it is necessary, it is binding, it must or ought to happen for Christ to reign as king, to exercise his kingship continuously until where? Or for the whole duration of time, up to the point when he may put all the enemies. God is the one who will place or set all of those who oppose and exhibit enmity and hostility towards or against God, and therefore also towards his Son, the Lord Jesus Christ. God will put all the enemies under his feet, that is, under Christ's feet, figuratively referring to them as being legally subject or in submission to Christ under Christ's feet, completely conquered. The last, final, or extreme and concluding enemy, which is rendered ineffective, caused to be inactive, inoperative, and useless, is death. What? Death. Let us note that death is stated to be an enemy, and most definitely not a friend. Death is the last enemy rendered ineffective. In truth, God caused all things to be in submission to Christ's feet, arranged in the position of being underneath his feet, under his rulership and authority and ability, legally in submission to and subjection to Christ. This is a reference that Paul uses to what God had previously foretold to King David, the prophet, and which King David wrote down so that God's people would read the prophecy, know it, and remember it also. It is recorded in the book of Psalms. In Psalm 8:6, and I'm going to read the King James Version, it says, "Thou madest him," referring to Christ, "to have dominion over the works of thy hands," over the works of God's hands. Thou, God, hast put all things under his, Christ's feet. Now returning to 1 Corinthians chapter 15, Paul continues, "But at whatever time that Christ would say that all things have been subjected and continue subjected to him, at that future time he'll be able to say that all things are ready and are in full submission to him. It is clear, evident, or plain to see that this submission to Christ is outside of, on the outside of, or excluding the one having subjected all things to Christ. God is the one who will have made all things in submission to his Son, the Lord Jesus Christ. It will be with or by God's power that this will fully be accomplished, but God himself is excluded from the submission or subjection under Christ. And then at whatever time that all things would be subjected to Christ, then at that time also the Son of God himself, Christ, who is God's Son, will be subjected to, caused to be in submission, to be arranged in the position of being underneath or under the authority of the one, and that of course is referring to God, his Father, who caused all things to be subjected to Christ. Why would Christ subject himself to God his Father? For the purpose and result that God may be all things in all people and things at that future time. God will definitely be all in all. Everything will be within the cause and sphere of action of Him, of God, among everything and everyone, including the Christ. At that time, only God's people will be alive, and therefore God is the one who will be the source of everything within and among everyone and everything, everywhere. All the people who will be alive at that future time will have received their new spiritual bodies, like the one that Christ has already received. And all the spirit beings which obey the only true God will still be alive. But all the people and spirit beings who will have rejected God and rejected His Son, the Lord Jesus Christ, will have already received their death, their second death, which will be final. Regarding everybody and everything in every place at that future time, God will be supreme.